Okay, so today we are going to react to chapter 7 of Philosopher. Sorry for new nature. I'm real busy these days. So, anyway, before we get started, I just want to say that this episode is sponsored by Joey, Angie, and we turned in the video to find out how to get 10% off your order of the Angie power or the scissors. Anyway, let's get ready to it. Shall we? Oh, just love this intro. Just remix it.
Welcome, dear listeners. I'm Jonathan Carlin.
Oh, and I'm Ben Carlin.
I
forgot I had a part.
Forget something.
You do. And we invite you to join us through the GriffinDoor,
Mr.
your one-way ticket to the enchanting world of Harry Potter. So grab your wands, dust off your broomsticks, and join us as we unlock the secrets behind Philosopher's Stone, Chapter 7, The Sorting Hat.
I gotta say, I feel like because we started just writing chaotic,
Yeah.
but I feel like it's very fitting
Yeah.
because the chapter art for the Sorting Hat
Yeah,
is,
let's talk about that one just immediately.
because it is remarkably not the hat.
It is, yeah, I wrote down, I literally, like, before I even finished chapter 6, I looked over and was like, what is this? What I wrote terrible art to chapter name.
Yeah, but that's Pete's and not the Sorting Hat. That's just the wrong object. Or person, I guess. I don't really know. Yeah, it's a polka-dot piece. And not the Sorting Hat for some reason. I don't understand why.
It's like the chapter art, in case you're wondering, depicts Peeves holding the walking sticks, looking all angry and floating up in the air. But the chapter is called The Sorting Hat, and the Sorting Hat and the act of being sorted into Gryffindor for Harry is one of the most significant moments in all of wizarding history, not just in this book, this is a huge monumental moment. So that the chapter art is not the hat or Harry wearing the hat. It is terrible. And then not only that, on top of that, the picture of Peeves is also a terrible picture of Peeves.
Yeah.
It's he's not even funny.
Right,
Right, I know. He's not nearly whimsical enough. He just seems actually like a mean creature.
Right.
And that's not how Peeves is. So,
Right. He should look like everything is a joke.
Yes, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. So we'll come back to I can go deep into Peeves, as we get closer
know
to
you can.
the poltergeist
Yes.
lore there. But no, so this was one of those things where I did write Peeves, who was also famously not in the films. I think
all.
probably just one of those things that was just too hard to incorporate as an additional detail. But either which way, I feel like the Sorting Hat is highly depictable. It feels like there's really no.
Because the movies, it was everyone was just laughing all the time when he was on screen, so that's why pieces in the film, but yeah, that's why.
Excuse. I know a lot of times it's there's a little bit of caution being added towards the chapter art, not being too much of a giveaway, but quite literally
It's called The Sorting Hat.
It's called The Sorting Hat.
Yeah,
it's even though in this
title.
chapter we will be
Forever.
mildly more informed than the characters themselves about how the sorting is going to go down. We already know it's going to be a hat. So anyway, just show us the hat.
Show us the hat.
It's such a cool thing. So anyway, but that being said, I felt like there was no way to not talk about it first first things first.
Yeah,
as we
yeah.
enter this chapter.
Although I will say then, before we dive too far in, that I have some other I know last week we were #1 on the Books podcast in Sweden, if you recall.
Oh yeah, shout out to Sweden.
Yeah, what up, Sweden? Well, I was looking through the charts today, and we are presently #3 in Sweden. So there is that. However, Ben, we are #1 in books in Lebanon.
Lebanon.
What's up? Perhaps you've heard of us. We're kind of a big deal in Lebanon.
This is like a new running gag for the show. It's just like, which country are we the #1 on books in this week?
We're #3 in America.
Okay.
So that's pretty good. I'll take that. I mean, way to go to all of our listeners out there. I'm just, I am just proud of our audience for boosting through the Gryffindor to the #3 book slot.
It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. Just a little bit of a sophomore slump for Sweden. That's all.
They'll be back. Look, if you're a Swedish listener, just go through right now. Just give it a rating, give it a review. Maybe we'll read it next time. Make sure you include "I'm from Sweden" in your review, and that I promise you, if there is any. If there's a variety, I'll pick one of them. But if there's not, I'll still pick the "I'm from Sweden" one.
Okay.
So there you go.
There we go. Yeah,
all right, we'll get to the review later. Anyway, let's talk about the chapter itself. The sorting hat. Mainly what happens is the first years arrive into the Great Hall, and they go through the sorting ceremony, and that is the most. We are introduced to Snape for the first time from afar. Although the next chapter is called the Potions Master, so we're going to get a full-on introduction there. And Harry sees Dumbledore for the first time, and that's the gist of what happens in this chapter, but there is still a lot to unpack.
Oh my gosh, yeah, it's just like endless amounts and lots of like really cool I think ideas and stuff, but kind of first and foremost, so we can kind of get the ball rolling here, is the fact that of all people, both Ron and Hermione are both unaware of what the sorting ceremony actually entails.
It is very unusual that, yes, no one, even Malfoy, doesn't seem like he knows how the sorting is going to go.
Yes, and so you get a little bit of a suggestion from Ron, sort of on behalf of Fred and George, where Ron says the line some sort of test. I think Fred said it hurts a lot, but I think he was joking. And when you know the Weasleys, and then even especially the more you get to know the Weasleys, it wouldn't surprise you in the slightest that Fred and George were just trying to mess with Ron.
Yeah.
But then in addition to that, Hermione knows that that the ceiling of the Great Hall is enchanted because she read about it in Hogwarts History. And it's how on earth is it possible that Hogwarts History does not make reference to the Sorting Hat?
Right, it really does not track. But Hermione doesn't know how it's going to go either, because it says Hermione Granger was whispering very fast about all the spells she'd learned and wondering which one she'd need. And it's you're right. It's there is no way that Hermione doesn't know, and there's no way that Hogwarts History doesn't mention the Sorting Hat. And I mean, sure, maybe Fred and George were messing with Ron, but they're not his only older brothers. He's the 6th Weasley to be going. There's no way the Sorting Hat has not come up in his life.
Well, so this is where I always think it's kind of interesting, because I feel like there's a decent possibility that the Sorting Hat is quite literally under its own Fidelius charm.
Yeah, oh yeah, I subscribe to that theory so hard.
Yes, absolutely,
Yeah.
because there is this sort of really, really unusual nature about how the fact that the Sorting Hat is never ever discussed with incoming students prior to their sorting, which means that as students you are supposed to come in, enter the sorting, and it's a piece of information that you can know but not share. Right. I think is what it comes down to.
It's until the hat, the way the Fidelius charm would work in this scenario is very similar to how it's concealed within Grimmauld Place,
right,
where Dumbledore is the secret keeper of the headquarters of the Order of the Phoenix, which in Book 5 is Grimmauld, number 12, Grimmauld Place.
Right.
Whilst Dumbledore is alive, he has to tell each individual person the secret of where it is, and then those people know the information, but they can't tell anybody else about it.
Right.
So that's how the hat would have to work. It seems like the hat is under a Fidelius charm, where it itself is the one who has to tell you the secret of itself.
Yeah, either that or somehow it's like a pass from headmaster to headmaster type of.
Well, but it's not Dumbledore who tells them about it. Like it is, and I don't think McGonagall says tells them about the hat ahead of time either. She just like puts the hat on the stool and then the hat begins to sing. She doesn't like give them instructions like everyone's going to put on the hat next.
Right. She even says like
Yeah.
like before they enter the Great Hall, it says the sorting ceremony will take place in a few minutes in front of the rest of the school. I suggest you all smarten yourselves up as much as you can while you are waiting.
Yeah.
Which, if anything, almost seems to further suggest that like this is the type of thing where you're about to need to like put on some kind of a performance or put your skills on display.
Yeah. And then leading up to it, it says Harry quickly looked down again. Professor McGonagall silently placed a four-legged stool in front of the first years. On top of the stool, she put a pointed wizard's hat. The hat was patched and frayed and extremely dirty. And like no one says anything else, the hat just begins singing. So it seems like the way it's working is that no one can tell you about the hat. The hat must tell you about the hat.
But I think that this is so vital. I mean, even if you were the founders devising this exact concept, because you don't want...
Yes, tell you process the hat. We tell you what the hat, but it is pretty much what it has to do, and it's only that process actually works.
Students coming into school with like, I mean, they may know like which house that they like would prefer or something like that. They might know the houses their parents were in, but like they don't know how to prepare for what sorting will be like. And therefore it's sort of like you don't like, you'll know for 35 seconds prior to your moment what's about to happen. The interesting exclusion to this, where we do eventually get a commentary about the hat prior to sorting, is when Harry
in the epilogue.
Epilogue. So literally we're going from, chapter 7 of book 1 to not even the last chapter of the series, but the epilogue of the series, where Harry is talking to his son Albus, and basically says like the sorting hat takes into consideration like what you want, or at least it did for me. And what's interesting about this is that like normally with the Fidelius charm and Dumbledore, for example, in Grimmauld Place, is that upon Dumbledore's death, everybody who then had been told the location would now be able to share the location because they would become new secret keepers themselves, which dilutes the power of the Fidelius charm. But I think like what happens at the Battle of Hogwarts is Voldemort summons.
Yeah, so yes, I got a dog who's barking right now, but yes, the hat is a real gimmick. Right? You should know how it works now, right?
The sorting
hat from the headmaster's office, which he then plants on top of Neville's head and then lights it on fire.
Right. So what like the way the theory would go is that when he does this, he effectively kills the sorting hat.
Yes.
And like destroys the Fidelius charm.
Well, it destroys it to the tune of now everybody who knows about the sorting hat
is now a
secret keeper. Meaning anybody who has ever been sorted before is now capable of talking about it.
Right. So conceivably, if it's still true, Harry could tell Albus about the sorting hat, but then Albus could not tell other people.
That is possible.
Until he has been sorted, I guess. Right?
Maybe? Depending on how they revive the sorting hat after the fact, I think would be the answer to that question.
Right. You're right. Yeah. Okay. I don't know how it would go from there. But the point is, there is a loophole wherein Harry should be able to tell Albus about the sorting hat because Voldemort destroys the...
Oh, yeah, sorry, this is ad here. I'll just do it right now.
The initial Fidelius charm.
Yes. So,
but prior to that is like the only explanation to me for why it's not in Hogwarts history and why Ron himself doesn't know about it.
Right, yeah, because I mean Ron would literally be he's got 5 brothers ahead of him and 2 parents, all of whom have been through the
sorted.
ceremony. It's like this has never come up around the dinner table before at any point in time. Like, but what I love about that though is that there's like a completely in-universe explanation that's also kind of cool.
Yeah, it is very cool.
It's like you can look at this as sort of like a loophole or a plot hole or something like that. But instead, I think it's just like you just got to find the clever explanation. And in my mind, that's my own personal.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that's pretty fun. And we know that the Fidelius charm can be broken by powerful spells because that's exactly what happens to the Potter's house, which ironically also by Voldemort.
Yes, yeah, right, exactly.
Yes,
Yep, so that's exactly right. The other kind of interesting thing here that I found is like another one of those little bit of like an interesting inconsistency is the stool itself. I think that in Prisoner of Azkaban, and I went through and I was trying to fact check this a little bit, and it seems like things have also been like edited throughout the years. But I think when Flitwick brings out the stool for the sorting ceremony in Prisoner, it's a 3-legged stool, or it has once been described as a 3-legged stool, and it's since been corrected to be a 4-legged stool. But this is kind of funny because I am absolutely certain that in J versus Ben trivia before, we have had the question before, how many legs are on the stool, and it basically is like it pretty much has to be 3 or 4. That's kind of like one of those things where it's like, was that like an inconsistency that was like covered up? Is there any like other reason about a 3-legged stool that like it wouldn't be the correct kind of stool or anything?
I think the reason, like, if you wanted to back, I don't know. So are you saying that it did say 3 in here?
It has been corrected. If you go to the latest copy of Prisoner of Azkaban, it says 4 in here, and it says 4 now in Prisoner of Azkaban. But there are reports online that at one point in time, Prisoner described a 3-legged stool.
Oh, okay. That seems backwards. I could have argued towards like it being a 3-legged stool here and have been a 4-legged stool in Prisoner. Solely because the 3-legged stool could then represent Gryffindor, Ravenclaw, and Hufflepuff.
Okay.
And like would omit would be 3-legged because Slytherin had split from the school. And then after Chamber of Secrets, the Chamber of Secrets like lore would have been resolved, at which point the stool could have 4 legs again because like the school would no longer be split by that particular mystery, which was what happened upon Slytherin splitting from the school. But apparently it's backwards, so I don't think that actually tracks.
I know, no, that's very interesting. But while you're on that exact note, I think it's a perfect time to jump just a little bit ahead, and we can always jump back.
Yeah.
There is, of course, the opening feast sentiment from Mr. Albus Dumbledore, and it feels like pure chaos, but I'm going to let you explain it. So the famous line is nitwit, blubber, oddment, tweak.
Yes. So he says his complete nonsense words, and Harry and everyone applauds, and Harry's like, what was that about? Is he mad? And he asks Percy the prefect, and I love that he's continuously listed as Percy the prefect. We made a video about this random line of dialogue once upon a time about like what on earth does he mean here, and our own explanation is that each word, nitwit, blubber, oddment, and tweak, are all meant to be represent the opposing ideals of each house. So, for example, a nitwit would be like the opposite of Ravenclaw.
Yeah, like where a nitwit might suggest like lacking in intelligence or smarts.
So then blubber, we said was this. I went back and reread our own script, so that's sort of where I'm going from here. But we said blubber would represent the opposite of a Gryffindor, meaning someone who is maybe like blubber just means fat. So that's perhaps like a word 11-year-old might use to put down someone who is like less athletic. Which, if you're in Gryffindor, they are like a little bit more bold and daring. So it's like athletics might be something they would take very seriously. And by might, I mean there actually is a line from Snape where he tells Harry that if his Quidditch team loses, it'll be the first time Gryffindor finished at the bottom of the table in 200 years. So, like, it is definitely a house that takes athletics seriously, because that means Gryffindor has never finished less than 3rd in a 4-team contest in 2 centuries.
In 2 centuries, yeah. And there's additionally like the layer we get from Nearly Headless Nick that Slytherin has won the House Cup for how many years in a row now?
It is 6 years in a row.
6 years in a row. But I think that it's interesting to note that I think it's they have not won the house, or they've won the House Cup 6 years running. But I think that at least while Charlie Weasley was on the
on the Gryffindor Quidditch team,
it means that Gryffindor has won the Quidditch Cup more recently
than the House Cup. Although I guess I would suspect that usually who wins the Quidditch Cup also wins the House Cup, but it's not always mirrored.
Okay. That's true. That's true.
Next up, we said that I almost disagree with our past selves here. We said oddment. It means a remnant part of something, like left over from a larger piece or set, which is no longer useful.
All heroes, all villains, or a mix?
So like if you had like a large piece of cloth and all that was left for a few scraps, that weren't really functional or anything, those would be the oddments. So our argument in our video was that an oddment would be the opposite of Slytherin, who as far as the books or Dumbledore go would view the Slytherins as really valuing pure bloodedness. So i.e. if you're like a half-blood or any fraction of magicalness that isn't 100%, you are an oddment and not worthy of magical education. But I would almost think you could also argue oddment for Hufflepuff because she took the rest, like took the oddments.
Oh, I kind of see what you mean. Yeah, like I mean that's sort of like the entire mantra of Hufflepuff House is that they're just sort of like the like open armed, like group. It's sort of like everybody's welcome here.
Right.
Yeah. So.
But then otherwise, then Tweak, of course, would be left for Hufflepuff. At least in our initial video, the Hufflepuffs are like loyal and hardworking and humble and down to earth. So from their point of view, they may think the value placed on things like courage or wit or cunning by the other three houses were a little excessive and needs to be tweaked.
Okay.
So
interesting.
But then the point of it, as often is the case with Dumbledore, is that like it's not about like the differences between the houses. The school functions best when the houses are all like supporting one another, and it's more of like a unified thing. So the idea would be that look at these these are words that anyone in your house might use to describe the members of the other houses.
Sure.
So, like, if you're in Gryffindor, you might call the Ravenclaws nitwits as, like, an insult or something.
Like a way to, like, needle them specifically.
Right.
Supposedly, that would be the way to, like, to get through to them or something. Yeah.
Right. Like, but the point is that Dumbledore is trying to make, at least according, our theory is that he's saying these things is like, look, the irony is that all of you might think of these words to describe the other houses, and yet you're all doing it because you're all actually the same.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, I love it. I love it.
And
it's another one of these things where, like, I feel like Dumbledore sort of has this, like, kind of constant air of whimsy. I feel like it hails back to the fact that he, again, uses, like, candy as, like, his passwords for all of his, to get into, his office and stuff like that. Like, it comes across as, like, a little bit of, like, silliness, which I think we see even more of, further on in the chapter when they sing the school song. And, like it's like one of these things where like Dumbledore almost seems to like at your own pace, which is like usually not the way that you sing songs. It's like at the rhythm that the song is supposed to be sung. And of course, Fred and George just fully lean into
the funeral march.
The funeral march, which they're just going like a painfully slow.
I know. I wrote like a little note next to the song, which I don't think ever comes up again. Like in any of the other opening feasts, it's not like, all right, and now it's time to sing the song or anything like that. But my note is that my headcanon is that I like to think that Godric and Salazar are the ones who wrote the lyrics to the song together.
Okay.
And like they just kept coming up with like, because it's very silly, and I like to think that they were just coming up with like silly things like, we need a school song, and Helga and Rowena were over there like, you guys, I don't like it. They're like, no. Here's the fun part. Here's the fun part, guys. You can sing it to any tune at all. That's the fun part. That's what makes it so whimsical. And they're like, okay, well.
This goes back to like our favorite headcanon, which is just simply that the friendship between Godric and Sal, as we always like to call him, Sal, is nothing but like jovial, and it's like the friendship everybody has always wanted. It's like fully founded on mutual respect and humor and talent and like regard and respect, and it's like so the idea in our
which
minds,
is what the Sorting Hat says. It says like Salazar and like it asks of the school, were there ever better friends than Gryffindor and Slytherin, unless it was the other two of Ravenclaw and Hufflepuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Even the fact that there's the line in the original song from the Sorting Hat that says, or yet in wise old Ravenclaw, which I was like, it's kind of interesting to me that it regards Ravenclaw as wise and old, which, I mean, you would assume on some level that these were some of the most powerful witches and wizards of ever. So they probably lived like nice long lives and stuff like that. But for Ravenclaw to receive those accolades specifically of wise and old, makes me feel like there's a decent possibility that Ravenclaw is like a fair bit older than the other founders as their founding,
right?
Which I don't know if I have anything like really interesting in terms of
or just more, because the way the Sorting Hat was formed was that Gryffindor took the hat off his head, which I like to think all the founders made fun of him for, because it's very silly looking.
No, but he like sported it, and he's like, it's totally working.
My headcanon is that he came back from like a farmer's market type village shop one day and is sporting the hat and is like, guys, what do you think? What do you think? And they all look at him and just immediately begin making fun of him, and he's like, I'm keeping it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then it goes on to be the Sorting Hat, which is fantastic. So if anyone wants, me and Ben to write a founder series one day, we're open to it, and I have a million ideas about how it would go. But in any case, wise old Ravenclaw, so eventually they need a way to sort the students in the houses after they are gone. So Gryffindor takes the Sorting Hat off of his head, and they each put a little bit of themselves in there. So to me, this is just more of like them just like teasing one another. It's like I can imagine, even if they're all like in their mid-20s or something, that they always refer to like Rowena as like, oh, wise old Ravenclaw over there.
Oh yeah, I can see that too.
It like really bothers her because she's so prim and proper.
Right, yeah. right. Like it's almost like she's not actually older at all. It's just like her innate maturity.
Exactly.
Yeah, being classic Sal and Godric.
Yeah,
totally using it.
Oh my gosh, such fun, such jokesters.
No, so I love that. Going back to again the Sorting Hat's original song, though, there's a couple of lines that are pretty just great in here, but
yes.
The one that stood out to me this time around was it says, "Oh, you may not think I'm pretty, but don't judge on what you see. I'll eat myself if you can find a smarter hat than me." The "I'll eat myself" is a really funny reference to just like a sort of slang throwaway term. It's like I'll eat my hat.
Oh,
you know, and it's like he like the Sorting Hat is basically saying like I'll eat myself because I can't eat my hat because I am a hat.
Oh, I also like when he says, "For I'm the Hogwarts Sorting Hat and I can cap them all," and it's like he's making a hat pun. Yeah, he the hat is making a hat pun about capping people. That's hilarious.
Yeah, like how can I never thought of a hat making a hat pun? It's so funny when you think about it like that.
I also what I appreciate about the opening song is that despite this is I think very cleverly done, is that despite all of the negativity you've heard about Slytherin going in, the hat itself does not give Slytherin like a negative
spin.
Yeah. He just says, you'll make your real friends. Those cunning folks use any means to achieve their ends. And it's like, you could interpret that, but it's like, for all intents and purposes, that's just like, oh yeah, these people get stuff done. But I don't know if you ever do this. Whenever I read this particular phrasing, it's like, I always feel like the word bitter has been left out. Like, these cunning folks use any means to achieve their bitter ends. Like, I don't know why my brain always fills that in. Do you ever fill that in?
I have never filled that in my head before, but I can absolutely see like where you're coming from.
Right? Is that a phrase like to achieve? Is like bitter? Is that part of like a phrase?
The phrase like to the bitter end. Is sort of like and they held out till the bitter end.
It feels to me like the way it's worded is meant to leave the word bitter hanging in the air. Like, oh, you thought we were going to say that, but I made it a little more fair.
Sure.
And it's like, no, but actually it is more negative because it's Slytherin.
So do you think that the Sorting Hat is sort of like letting the audience itself sort of like interpret what it's left out? Like it's like I'm not gonna be like actively anti-Slytherin in my spiel here. I do think it's interesting that Slytherin comes last both in the song and also when Professor McGonagall is listing off the various houses. 4 houses are called Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw, and Slytherin. So, like, she does even lead with her own house, which is Gryffindor.
She does. That's actually the same order the hat goes in.
Okay.
As well.
So maybe that's. It's also alphabetical, is it?
It is. Yeah. So maybe that's part of it.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Who knows?
Okay. Interpret it what you will. There. Anyway, I don't have too much more to say about the song itself, but then we do get into the sorting, where you get introduced to just a myriad of students, some of whom go on to show up as like Harry's friends or classmates later on, some of whom, like Brocklehurst Mandy, never hear from them again.
Yeah,
I know.
You know?
It's so you've got like Millicent Bulstrode who comes up just all the time and always, Lavender Brown, but yeah, you're right. There's another character who I think I was reading. I'm trying to find what their name is now, because of course it is like actively forgettable. I think it's Sally Ann Perks, maybe, is like one of the names that's listed. And I think later in book 5, when they're like reading off names to like step forth for your like OWL's examinations, you get like a lot of throwbacks to these early names. But like this is one of the ones that's just like left off.
Which one?
I think it's Sally Ann Perks.
Sally Ann Perks. Did I miss that reading through just now?
Let's see here. Yeah, it's after Patil, and then Perks, Sally Ann.
Oh, Sally Ann Perks. Wow, you're right. There it is again. What a forgettable name. There's a There's a bunch of other interesting things that I feel like happened during the sorting. Seamus Finnegan, for example, is like someone who is like one of the only ones that gets like a Neville does too, but Seamus specifically has like a little bit of like a pause. And what's interesting about that is Seamus is the one sorted directly before Hermione, who quite literally we know through like Pottermore reading is a hat stall. Yeah.
So it's like, it literally says like Finnegan Seamus, the sandy-haired boy next to Harry in line, sat on the stool for almost a whole minute before the hat declared him a Gryffindor. And then Granger Hermione, and it's just like, you know, the hat went on her head, Gryffindor. And
I know. It's like this is definitely like a retcon thing where it's like, Hermione, definitely that one was more important.
but like, where else would you have even put like Seamus? Like, like it doesn't seem like he, in the same way as like some of the others, have like an obvious like you could say like Ron and Hufflepuff, Hermione and Ravenclaw, like, you know, Neville and Hufflepuff or whatever. Like, but this is not one where
I know.
Like Seamus is always like embodied.
I know. I underlined almost a whole minute and wrote down like, I wonder what the debate was between.
I know, yeah.
Like the only thing that really stands out to me is that later on in book 5, when the Ministry is like attacking Harry, Seamus is like the Gryffindor boy who's kind of against Harry that year, like clinging more to like his mom's beliefs that the Ministry is correct. And I don't know where that would place Seamus otherwise then, though. Like what that attitude might represent. Like possibly like he's just like more loyal to his family, so maybe like Hufflepuff or something, or maybe just like all the Slytherins are against Harry, so maybe Slytherin. It doesn't seem like I don't have any arguments for Ravenclaw.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like he's ever been like described as like being like a super student or something like that. He almost seems more like a little bit of like a class clown jokester type.
Yeah, I mean, like the attitude he displays when he isn't aligning with Harry is like maybe more similar to like Zachariah Smith.
Yeah,
who isn't Hufflepuff?
Right, that's a good point.
I guess it could be that one.
But this just goes to show as well that like your sorting doesn't always like perfectly indicate necessarily what your characteristics will be like. So there is that. But yeah, so then Hermione of course does get sorted, and it does feel like there's just like a bit of like a quick oversight that she would be like a candidate for Ravenclaw in there, like with just like being extremely studious and valuing like intelligence and wanting to excel. Particularly like with grades and stuff like that. Then we do get Neville, who it does give us like just the phrase, the hat took a long time to decide with Neville when it finally shouted Gryffindor. So that's sort of like, we do know why.
Yeah.
That.
And then he gives the hat to Morag McDougal, who never comes up again as far as I'm concerned.
I specifically looked up Morag because I was like, is this the name of Aragog's? I almost did the thing. Aragog's wife. Mosag.
Yeah.
But interestingly, Morag is the name of the second most famous like loch monster.
Like besides the Loch Ness monster?
Besides Nessie.
Okay.
Morag is the next most highly regarded like loch monster.
Oh, okay. Like lake monster.
Lake monster, yeah.
Okay.
And so the decision for the use of the name Morag is possibly could be a reference to.
That's interesting. The other thing that stood out here, and I can never remember this, is the surname McDougal, because I know whenever they're like when you learn McGonagall's backstory, if you do some like extra reading on Pottermore, I can never remember whether she was like engaged to Gregor McDougal or Dougal McGregor.
Yeah, so it's no longer Pottermore anymore, it's Wizarding World. But it's the same idea, like if you read about her backstory, you learn about her love interest is basically what this is.
It's Dougal McGregor.
It's Dougal McGregor. Okay, never mind. Not important. Not related. I wrote that. I was like, wait, Gregor McDougal? Was that related? Is this who that did McGonagall's ex-flame marry someone else and produce Morag?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I know. Oh my gosh, can you imagine? Like, and then it has to be McGonagall who like called them forward. Like,
McDougal. She's having like a little private battle over there.
I know. Yeah,
and
Then this better not be in Gryffindor.
I know, but let's see. But we don't even know where Morag goes.
Yeah, we don't know at all.
Except, I guess, not Gryffindor.
Not Gryffindor. Yeah.
Yeah.
We know that much.
Then Moon comes after him, and there's just like a little bit of trivia around Moon, who was also never mentioned again. But the character here in Harry's Year with the last name Moon, that was originally going to be the character of Luna Lovegood.
Yes, yeah. Where Luna, of course, is the Spanish word for moon.
Yeah.
And that is always like one of the interesting ones when like Luna goes on to be such a prominent part of the group as the story unfolds, because like everyone else in their lineup, like you meet Ginny, Neville, Harry, Ron, Hermione, all right away.
Yeah.
They're all there the whole time, and then Luna doesn't make her appearance until book 5.
I know.
It's like remarkable that,
which is like, I mean, I would have loved to have known what Luna was thinking during like Chamber of Secrets. You know?
Oh, I know. Yeah,
like, what's she doing? Because she's there.
Certainly, Luna has something to say.
Yeah,
absolutely. And chances are, but we just made a video a couple weeks ago. Like Luna's always right. Like chances are, Luna would have totally like been able to be like, it's obvious,
it's a
isn't it?
basilisk.
Yeah, 100%. Basilisks aren't real, Luna.
It'd be so funny because if she brought that up, it'd be like, that's a pretty good guess, actually. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense now that you say it.
Now you say it, yeah, that's pretty spot on. Yep. And
Yep.
Luna does seem to have like a bit of a knowledge base about Fantastic Beasts, so it seems entirely possible that she actually would have cracked open the otherwise non-essential reading Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them as a first year.
I know, as a first year.
Yes,
right there.
probably.
Is that one of those that's like not in there?
What's not in there?
The basilisk.
Oh, maybe it's. Oh man, I can't remember now. My brain literally was like having a ping pong battle on whether or not I thought it was. I thought it was.
God, I am so curious now. I want to know because this is like a weird thing that you can like buy the apparent textbook Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, which is published for us Muggles apparently, but you're like buying like Newt Scamander's version of it.
Yes.
Yeah, and like. But what's weird about it is that there are so many animals that, like, even in the movies for the Fantastic Beasts movies, you see Newt interact with that are not in the book.
Notably, the Zowu is like one.
Yeah, like that's a creature from movie 2 that classic Grindelwald, yet you don't read about it ever in the book. Like, if you read a book, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, the textbook, it is absolutely not in there and nowhere to be found at all. It's a weird choice, but yeah, you suggest he wants to protect the creature, but who knows?
The really big ones, and then the Manticore, I think, is like a very misrepresented creature.
It's not in there. Then there's the swooping evil, which is like Newt's like little ace monster up his sleeve, like the entire first movie. That's not in there.
Or the Chillin.
The Chillin.
Yeah, which is spelled
Qilin.
Yeah.
The Chillin. That's like the little horse dragon thing that can tell whether or not you're pure of heart. And it's like you can see maybe why Newt wouldn't put that in there. Like he within the context context of the movie Secrets of Dumbledore, the Chillin is this like super rare animal that like is nearly endangered. There's like maybe 3 in the world or something.
Yeah,
Would you describe it as a horse dragon?
That is what I would describe it as a deer. But when I was recently reading about it for a video, the Wikipedia page listed it as like a half dragon, half horse.
Oh,
and I was like,
I was gonna say I would go with deer like 11 times out of 10.
So would I. But apparently that's what it's supposed to look like, is half dragon, half horse.
Okay.
So anyway, I can see why Newt, who cares about fantastic beasts and their preservation, would not actually list where to find it or tell you anything about the Chillin at all. So now I'm wondering though, like if basilisks are in Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, then there's almost no reason the entire school isn't immediately onto the fact that it's a basilisk, because like even first year should have learned about them.
Right. So then it would almost be interesting if it's not in there, because it's like, that's how they didn't figure it out.
That's why they didn't figure it out. This is really your fault, Newt.
Newt?
Come on, man.
Although they literally have the chocolate frog card with Dumbledore on it that has Nicholas Flamel, and nobody can think of why the name like rings a bell in the back of their mind.
Well, that's true too, but like it doesn't just have to be first years. It's surprising to me that Dumbledore can't figure out it's a basilisk, you know. This especially because it has happened. He's had 50 years to think about it. Yes, you know. Why doesn't Dumbledore ask Myrtle anything?
Yeah.
How has no one asked Myrtle how she died? It is so also on that exact note, in this exact chapter, the same thing happens where they're talking to Nearly Headless Nick, and Seamus asks Nearly Headless Nick, how did he get covered in blood, about the Bloody Baron? And Nearly Headless Nick says, I've never asked. Are you kidding me, Nick? Are you kidding me? You haven't asked the Bloody Baron how he died in the last 1,000 years? Because that's ridiculous if you ask me. And honestly, if you had asked him, then you could have answered this question right here, and we might have solved the entire diadem mystery on like day 1. So I'm blaming Nearly Headless Nick on this one.
Well, there you go. But you said 1,000 years, and it set me up perfectly, because specifically in the book, it is written as like, we know that we go to Nearly Headless Nick's 500th death day party.
You're right. The Bloody Baron, though, was alive at the same time as Salazar Slytherin.
You're correct. So the Bloody Baron,
he's been dead for about 500 years longer.
Yeah, so the Bloody Baron's been there twice as long as Nearly Headless Nick. However, in the audiobook, again, this is like one of those like another like small edit, but the audiobook does say it's been he hasn't eaten anything for nearly 400 years. But it is edited after the fact for nearly 500 years, because we know that he was killed in the year 1492, and then 500 years later would be 1992, which is when the Chamber of Secrets is opened, and also when he has his 500th death day party
on Halloween.
I always feel like the fact that it's specifically like 1492, I'm like, is there some type of strange like Christopher Columbus exploration related detail? It's like 1492 is just such an obscure date for it to also have like otherwise noteworthiness, which is, you know, the year that
that Nearly Headless Nick was killed.
Yeah, and Columbus sailed. So
and Columbus sailed,
like, what are the odds of that? So anyway, that's just a total brief aside. But I always think it's interesting whenever, because I will read and listen to the book or the chapters before we do our episodes, and like when there are those like little like isms, it's like
corrections.
Because obviously Jim Dale recorded this, you know, like.
Oh yeah, like forever ago.
Yeah, So I mean, he recorded it with whatever the original phrasing was.
Yeah.
So just another small modification that I caught there. Let's see here.
Let's see. Harry sees Professor Quirrell up at the table as he's looking down there, and I guess it describes him as he was looking very peculiar in a large purple turban. This is like, I made a note, like, was he not wearing the turban when they met the first time? I guess not. We
made this point, I think, actually, because at the time that he would have met Harry at the Leaky Cauldron, Harry shakes his hand, and it's like he's wearing the turban to conceal.
Yeah, I mean, he's wearing the turban now to conceal Voldemort.
Right, but Harry shakes his hand, which means that Voldemort wasn't occupying his body at the time of the Leaky Cauldron.
Right.
So this was a change. So I actually appreciate this line, because it does explain that something has happened of note in this like interim. But I always thought that this line was such a, like, the misdirect between Quirrell and Snape throughout this whole book
Yeah.
is so like well played. Even in the movies, you have the scene like where Harry like makes like eye contact with Snape, and like Quirrell is quite literally like facing the other way behind him. It's like man, like you have to get that detail right because it is so important, but it's so easy to not realize what's actually happening.
Oh, it's very good. And then the same thing happens at the Quidditch match when like Hermione lights Snape's robes on fire. Like you can go see Quirrell get knocked down.
Yes,
and, like that's actually what does it, which is sneaky. The thing about this particular scene, it's like it is cleverly done, where it's like Quirrell's looking the other way, so it's actually Voldemort causing his scar to hurt, not Snape. But like what that sort of means is that like for the rest of the year, Quirrell never had his back turned to Harry, like in class or anything,
Well, he is facing the class with a rather large iguana. As
we all seen that one, of course.
It is one of those things where it is so hilarious to me that in the films when they show Quirrell teaching that he's holding this just comically large iguana, because it's just such a like obviously non-magical creature. But like
why?
It's an odd choice because of all the creatures he could teach the class about, he picked a non-magical iguana, which is an odd choice of a creature. I don't really know why he didn't pick something more magical, but it is magically huge. I don't know.
Sure, why not?
Okay. May as well have him holding that iguana.
We got to scoot forward because we just did a really fun. We shot a really funny Jay versus Ben about treats in
yes, we did.
The Wizarding World, and we had a conversation about this particular treat, which is the peppermint humbugs.
Yeah.
And notably, it is one of like the items when all the food appears in the Great Hall, which has always been like when I was a kid, I was like, oh my gosh, this would be like so cool and interesting and fascinating. Actually, even on that note, let me pause for like one more second. I have seen a theory before that Nitwit, Blubber, Oddment, and Tweak are names of house elves who prepared the feast.
Oh, that's an interesting one.
So what Dumbledore is actually doing here is recognizing the house elves who had contributed to that year's feast.
I like that theory too.
Because it's literally like it's what he says, and then he says thank you, and then the feast appears. So it's literally like one of those things where it's like, oh, that's kind of like a fun other explanation otherwise. But this is so funny because I think what we were talking about, where were we?
I think it's in Hagrid's coat. There, it is described that there are peppermint humbugs in his coat, and like Harry identifies them as peppermint humbugs, and we were unsure, like, is that like a British thing? Because if it's a magic thing, Harry shouldn't know what they are yet.
Yes, and it is. I have looked it up. It is a hard-boiled sweet that is like notable in like a bunch of different countries, but specifically Great Britain. Is one where
the for some reason peppermint humbugs is like and for some reason. This random candy, this Muggle candy,
yes, which also comes out with like the main course. Like, so to think of a candy as being something, because then dessert pops up.
Oh yeah, not with the peppermint humbug. So
yes.
This is one with like peppermint humbugs. It sounds like whatever. You must like when I read that, I'm like, humbug must be like a word for some sort of a different word for like a certain kind of insect in Europe.
Oh, sure, yes.
And now they're like peppermint humbugs.
Right.
How magical. Like chocolate frog.
It sounds very like whimsical. But I do know, I mean, like it's not uncommon, like in the same way that people carry gum or mints or something in their pocket. Like I feel like that's probably just like why Hagrid had them. They were effectively just like mints. So again, just like one of those things where like, as an American where it didn't immediately mean something, you just sort of assumed that it was magical, and it's not. So I thought that was fascinating, and also fascinating that Harry specifically does not, he grabs one of everything except for the peppermints.
And I was like, never mind that. Peppermints? I don't think so. You know what he does grab, Ben? Potatoes. I don't know why there is this once you notice it, you can't unnotice it. There's just this like running theme that the Gryffindors love potatoes. So like there's right here, Percy's having some potatoes, offers them to Harry, and then amongst, maybe it's just like magical people like potatoes, which just doesn't seem like a very magical food, but there's all these things showing up on the table, and there are boiled potatoes, roast potatoes, and fries. So the house elves, maybe Nitwit, Blubber, Oddment, and Tweak, have made 3 different kinds of potato offerings for the students.
It's like how many different
Why?
how many starches do we need in this dish?
Yeah,
tonight?
I know.
Is 3 enough? Should we go for 4?
potato.
I'm gonna fill them up. Fill them up.
We could throw some baked potatoes in if we want.
We could
to.
do it. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
just to snap with the fingers. Yeah. So then we get like of course the introduction to the ghosts. Throughout this chapter we do get like a little bit of backstory on 3 of the 4 ghosts, but not the Gray Lady.
Yeah.
Which is kind of interesting. Because
Well, what's interesting is it describes that there being like 20 different ghosts or whatever.
That's true.
Yeah, but then it's like Nearly Headless Nick definitely describes the Bloody Baron as the Slytherin ghost, and
Right.
Nick is definitely the Gryffindor. Like there is like a house ghost per house, and yet that leaves like 16 other ghosts that are also there that must have gone to Hogwarts, because why else would they be haunting Hogwarts? And
True.
yet, and if they went to Hogwarts, they were sorted into houses. So why aren't they considered house ghosts?
It's not entirely clear. Maybe
Not
it's just
entirely
like
clear.
I think we eventually learned that the Forbidden Forest is like a home to a bunch of magical creatures, so it's like a safe place for them to live. So maybe it's the same with ghosts, where it's just sort of like you can flock to Hogwarts and like you're welcome here.
But
You
they
know?
still would have gone there.
Yes, they probably would have.
I guess, but like Myrtle is like in the bathroom, and she was in Ravenclaw, but she's not. I mean, she's not the Ravenclaw ghost, but she's a ghost who
she's-
was in Ravenclaw.
She's the ghost of that bathroom.
She's the ghost of that bathroom, that's for sure.
Yeah, look,
with the
I
mysterious
chose
death that
to
no
haunt the
one asks her
bathroom,
about,
but
even
you
though
want
there's
to
such an
haunt
obvious
a
way to figure
bathroom
out who killed her.
specifically?
My goodness, what a serious oversight.
It is indeed. The other, maybe not an oversight, but the way that Neville sort of like sidesteps, like everybody's kind of talking about like what their heritage is like. So Seamus is sort of saying like, my dad's a muggle, mum's a witch, a bit of a nasty shock for him. And then Neville is just sort of like, well, my grand brought me up. And then talks about like my great uncle Algie and like some other like family members and stuff. Great auntie Enid. But I always think the fact that like the great uncle Algie here, like algae is sort of like a thing that grows, and Neville obviously goes on to have some pretty significant like abilities in the field of herbology, and will eventually teach herbology at the school. So I feel like it's sort of like an interesting like little nod to like something that he will eventually have like talent in.
Right.
And I, for the longest time, this is like one of those things. I always thought the great uncle Algie and the story of like Neville bouncing, like in my head, this was like additional reading. This was like if you want to read more about Neville, like, he didn't show his magical abilities early. So like, whatever, like, we can go into the whole history of that. But no, it's just like right here in the canon. It's a rather large chapter about Neville's backstory, none of which includes anything to do with his parents.
Yep. Actually, this is a thing I'm surprised that hasn't been like retconned to the tune of the 4 legs or whatever. But when Neville's talking about it, or when they're talking about family, he says, well, my gran brought me up and she's a witch, said Neville. But the family thought I was all muggle for ages. And it's like, all muggle is really not the right word for that situation. It's like the word is squib. Right?
You're right.
There's really no reason that
but
Neville, the pure blood from the pure blood family, wouldn't say the word, wouldn't know the word squib.
Yes.
And this feels like the Dementor problem. That's what I wrote down, was the Dementor problem, where it's like the term squib, it like doesn't want to be introduced until Filch next year.
Yes.
Yeah, when you're actually going to learn it. So until then, we'll just say non-magical or all muggle. But
Want to gain trading skills without losing your investment? Start paper trading with...
Yeah, that definitely should be the word squib. But it's like they describe the Dementors as the Azkaban guards right up until Harry meets one, and then they're just called Dementors from there on out. Because
exactly.
it's like just meant to be a reveal for the audience, I guess.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. But you did tee me up nicely there with your reference to good old Argus.
Yeah.
Mr.
Filch. Okay, what's it?
So
Mr. Filch.
he is not yet referred to as a squib, and I feel like for good reason, because I don't think he's a squib at all. I think he's a poltergeist.
Yeah.
This has forever been one of in my personal opinion, I feel like it's like one of the like just most concrete theories that we've come up with.
It just makes sense.
It does make sense. So basically, like the idea,
because Filch does not make sense.
Filch doesn't. It's like, why would you have somebody who is so like non-magical existing inside of this castle full of magical calamities, and his job is to solve magical calamities when clearly all of the other professors can quite literally like the swamp that Fred and George create. Like Flitwick, I think, cleans it up with like the flick of his wand.
Yeah.
You know, and like intentionally leaves a portion of it as like a you know, a tribute to the twins' departure and stuff like that. Like it's a situation where it doesn't even seem like, as time goes on, like Dumbledore necessarily like super like respects Filch's ultimate authority inside of the castle. Like, you know, I think it's maybe like two books from now or something like that. But Dumbledore will eventually make a reference that's like, you know, you're not to use products from wherever, as I've been reminded by Filch like 392 times or something like that. And it's like, it's just so interesting because, you know, Dumbledore is always gracious to everybody. So, like, you know, it seems like he would always respect everything. But, you know, it's just, I don't know, like everything about Filch doesn't make sense. But then his opposition is always Peeves. And Peeves is a poltergeist that we learn in this chapter, basically is like a manifestation of the rule breaking inside of the school. And so, like, if these two are to be mirrors of one another, then, like, Filch is almost supposed to be, like, an aggressive adherence to the rules.
Right. So if Peeves, so the way poltergeists are made in the wizarding world is that if there's too much of one behavior, so like in the example of Hogwarts Castle, there's like so much rule breaking all the time by the students that it has manifested the poltergeist Peeves, which is why he's different from ghosts.
Yes.
And so he is the literal like embodiment of breaking the rules, which is why no one can control him any of the time.
Right.
So conversely, our theory is that Filch is the opposite. He is the manifestation of all the students that are like aggressively following the rules, like the Percys, or maybe just like the teachers, or whatever.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so, like, there is this sort of like running theme that like we've talked about it on the podcast before, that like magic is sort of has like a how we've been describing it has like a quirkiness to it. Like magic is inherently breaking the rules because like muggles can't use magic. Like the ability to use magic is breaking the rules.
Right.
And so like by following the rules strictly, that is a very non-magical thing to do. Like Dumbledore like sort of quietly, like even what you just said where he says like Filch has reminded me 392 times not to, you know, use these products or whatever. It's like he's telling them that, but at the same time he's basically like, please go ahead and use them.
Right.
Like, you know,
exactly,
like he's like lightly encouraging some rule breaking. Like,
yes.
Like, you know, they exist, but he doesn't really mind if students break the rules a little bit. So if Filch then is the poltergeist generated by all of the strict adherence to rules, then he is non-magical at all.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Exactly. So, and maybe therefore, like, you get that squib, like title attached to him
because he looks so much more like a regular human being, whereas Peeves is like floating around doing all kinds of magical wackadoo things.
Exactly. Yeah.
He's like a more of a traditional poltergeist, whereas the kind of poltergeist that Filch is just like so boring. But it's like otherwise he's just like why would he want this job where he has to do manual labor for no reason? It's like Harry comes in at one point like from Quidditch muddy somehow, and he like gets mud all over it, and Filch yells at him, and he's like, it's an extra few hours of mopping for me. And it's like, but like it's such a mean job because magically you could just get rid of the mud immediately. There's no reason this job should be held by someone who has to do manual labor.
No, it literally it makes no sense. Like it's either Filch's inclusion at the school is mean, or it's like literally a byproduct of the school.
Yeah, like they cannot get rid of him.
Yes,
which seems more likely to me, because the other thing is like Filch is like he does not seem to like kids at all. Like anytime anyone in Dumbledore's presence brings up the idea of like harming the students, it is like the one thing that sets him off. Hardcore.
Yeah.
And yet Filch is constantly like advocating for like whipping and thumb screws and dungeons, and it's like, yeah, you can work here. It's fine.
It's fine. It's like
it's
you can't. I know that you can't do any of it. You will never succeed in the same way that, you know, they also can't really banish Peeves either.
Right.
That's like, you know, if you go into the deeper archives of it, like you'll know that there have been like attempts to do so, and it's like you just can't. Like it's like a calamity of the school that has to be there because this is sort of like, again, the quirkiness of magic.
Exactly.
So anyway, love that. It's always been one of my favorite favorite theories. And
Yes.
I feel like it holds true, and it doesn't harm the narrative at all. It's not like it changes literally anything
Yeah.
other than like
Just
maybe makes you a bit more comfortable with why now Filch is in such an unfair position.
Oh, I know. Also, just I know we harp on this with some of Filch. It's like there's so much to say for a character who is not really around much. But it's like anytime Harry is out in the castle at night, there's always the threat of running into Filch, which is, it sounds like, oh well, yeah, of course, you gotta have like some threat looming out in the castle. But like Filch is working all day, so why isn't he sleeping at night?
Yeah.
It's like he's not, because he doesn't need to sleep because he's not a real person.
There you go.
Anyway, moving on. I love that Dumbledore says that first year should note the forbidden force on the grounds is forbidden to all pupils. Like, and unless you have detention, in which case we'll send you right in there, which I think is funny. And then I also like how Hogwarts is always described as like the safest place, except for Gringotts, except maybe Hogwarts or whatever. So safe, and yet even the opening speech, Dumbledore is like, "Oh yeah, the third floor corridor on the right hand side, out of bounds to everyone who does not wish to die." It's like to die. What do you wait by death? Do you mean like you mean die? It's like welcome to the safest school in the world.
Yeah, it's like
You could die.
right. It's like as long as you follow the rules, you're completely fine.
Like, did you like magically lock it with some sort of like powerful Dumbledore level spell? And it's like, I put a padlock on it. You can undo it with magic you've learned before you got here. Aloha Mora. Don't worry about it.
Oh my gosh, you set me up so nicely.
Yeah.
Can I give you a bit of information and knowledge here? Because you're exactly right. Aloha Mora is a term that is specifically taken from. And I hope I don't butcher this explanation, but it's a like field of like fortune telling called geomancy.
Oh.
And it comes from like Madagascar, and there's a whole batch of terms that fall underneath of this. Aloha Mora is one of them, which I think is supposed to like roughly translate to like thieves' friend. Or friendly to thieves, I think is what it's supposed to be. But interestingly, other terms inside of geomancy include Caput Draconis, which is going to be the password to get into the Gryffindor common room. It's the first one we ever learned.
That's interesting.
Other terms include Albus, Rubeus, and Fortuna Major, which is also a future Gryffindor password. Yeah. So a whole bunch of words have been borrowed from geomancy, which again is this like Madagascar version of fortune telling.
Well, that's interesting because I looked up what Caput Draconis was, and it's actually just Latin for dragon's head.
It is dragon's head. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
And even in geomancy, that is also what.
Okay, so fast forward to obviously the door.
In this particular case, it's actually not that situation.
It's really just for our benefit.
Yeah, it's a rare occasion where the like omniscient narrator is able to give us a piece of information that Harry himself doesn't know. That could be a bit of a tip of the hat, no pun intended, towards what is actually going to happen as this story unfolds.
Right.
And again, it's actually quite telling because basically it says.
Review
lay it on me.
for the day. This is from Everywhere Adam, who says, "Hey, brother," and then 4 fire emojis. This is a short one. It just says, "I've loved the Harry Potter series for 26 years. The Carlin brothers are my only source for deep dives into the wizard world."
Oh, that's so cool.
Thanks, Everywhere Adam.
I love that. Yeah, thank you so much, Adam, for leaving a review. As ever, if you would like to leave a review, on the podcast, it certainly helps us out a lot and some discoverability. And we might just read your review here on the pod,
especially if you're reviewing from Sweden.
As just a gentle reminder. There.
Just a gentle reminder. We want to get back at number 1, okay?
We want to be back in your good books.
Yeah, back in your good books. Let's do it.
You get it? Your good books?
I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was incredibly clever. As
yes,
you
no doubt.
No doubt. Anyway, but guys, I think that is all for this week.
Yeah, join us next week for Chapter 8, The Potions Master Through the GriffinDoor.
Okay, yes, sorry about that, but I really was the door. So, like that chapter, and it was pretty fun. The next one, take a eat. I promise I won't have to skip a whole chunk of it because I won't have to leave so quickly. Anyway, before we get going, let me know what you guys suggest in the comment section down below. And, this video is sponsored by W, an independent and secret cafe. So if you want some of their pies and tickles, or just one of them, use my code DJBRadio in the promo code section when you're checking out your order of your pie or tickle or both. And hit the link in the description down below, and you can check out your order and then use my code DJBRadio. And that's DJBRadio in all caps in the comment section, in the promo code section when you're checking out your order of every day. So just like this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.